Hello and welcome to me, Felix, and this is Briefly Everything, where we talk about history, but on a timeline, as it should be. So if you watch this entire course from the first video to the last, then you'll experience it like an extended TV series, in which case last episode left off at Abraham. So it's only fitting we continue from his son, Isaac. But let's not stop there, let's actually go even further to Isaac's son, Jacob, who lived in Canaan with his respective sons around 1650. Now remember, all of these dates are fairly rough indeed. Jacob now, by the way, would later be given the name Israel by God, and his people would be called Israelites from then on. So that's where that name comes from. Now there will be quite a lot of name-splaining in this one, so just get strapped in, I guess. One of Jacob's son now, Joseph, has a fascinating story, as he was sold into slavery in Egypt by his cruel brothers. However, a few years later, Jacob and his family of 70, well, that's what the Bible says at least, so I guess that's what we have to go with. I guess they mean very, very extended family by that. So this very extended family with Jacob in the front, they would be forced to leave Canaan as they were struck by a 7-year famine. And then they would venture to Egypt to seek a new home. By this time, Joseph, who had been sold to Egypt as a slave, had been elevated to second in command under the Pharaoh, so he was in fact the one who welcomed his own family into Egypt, to their new home. Supposedly he didn't hold a grudge and welcomed them with warm arms. You can read more about this in the book Genesis, the first book of the Old Testament. So as the story goes, the Israelites, which we can start calling them now, were welcome to stay, so they built a new home in Egypt and everyone was, jolly happy. But over the next centuries, the Israelites kept growing in numbers, which unfortunately made them less popular among the native Egyptians. So one of the pharaohs decided to enslave these poor Jews, which is a recurring theme in history for these very poor guys. So you have this captivity here for these poor Jews, but then later on you also have the infamous Holocaust. But there's even another one, the Babylonian captivity, which will occur in roughly 1,000 years from now. This time, and the first of 3 official enslavements, lasted for roughly 400 years. So we'll pick up that story later on. But just know that, yes, we have to pity these little Jews, at this time at least. So while the Jews were suffering their first of history's many captivities, I just want to clarify the terminology on what to call whom here. So in the book of Genesis of the Old Testament, we hear the word Hebrew for the first time in history. It then refers to Abraham being a Hebrew, and in my own hobby linguistic opinion here, these two words are awkwardly similar if you think about it. So now we have many famous names that are all synonymous with each other. We have, first of all, Hebrews. Okay, and that was then first used for Abraham, basically just meaning of Abraham. Then number 2 would be Jews. This refers then to people who are from the kingdom of Judea, which is this area here encompassing both Bethlehem and Jerusalem. Then number 3, we have the Israelites, which basically just means the children of Israel. Then number 4, and finally, we have Semites, meaning of Shem, who we talked about in the previous episode if you watched that one. So the term Semites, originally from the word Shem, or the guy Shem, has paved way now for the word Semitic languages and anti-Semitism. But as already discussed, anti-Semite is a very confusing term to say the least, if you think about it, because it refers to a Christian as much as a Jew, as much as a Muslim. So yeah, calling yourself that is confusing indeed. And that's it with history for today. The whole video revolved around the Bible, picking up with Jacob and talking about him and his family going to Egypt. And we revolved around 1650, roughly for the whole episode. Again, since these are maybe fictional things, I don't want to get offended or sued by saying too much here, then it's difficult to pinpoint the exact date of these things. Wonderful. Next episode, we're moving to ancient China, and I'll be speaking some Chinese as well. See you then.